What happened, Roxanne? I just went on to MomoCon, and that was good. But the hotel was yuck. The hotel was crazy, dirty, cold water, burnt food, and dirt on the floor. Tell me more. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Adventures with Roxanne. And I stayed this weekend. I stayed at the Atlanta Downtown Hotel, one of the downtown hotels in Atlanta. It was Downtown Hyatt Regency, or Hyatt Regency Downtown. I stayed there. I get checked into my hotel after being all day at MomoCon, and they upgraded me. I said, oh, that's a plus. But I still don't need 2 beds, but they gave me 2 beds and a balcony that I didn't use. But the bad thing was, the next day, I decided to go get breakfast. And I was told on the internet that it had a free continental breakfast. Or free breakfast, you know. I go downstairs, asked the lady, where is the free breakfast? She said, there's no free breakfast here. I said, it says it on the internet. It says it on the page you sign up to book your hotel. And she said, no, ma'am, I'm sorry. I said, well, there's nothing you can do because I didn't budget breakfast. No, ma'am. Oh, we do have a little shop over here that has cheaper breakfast items. So I just gave up, went on to the con, and got me just some lunch food later, and, a couple hours later, I just skipped breakfast. Well, I go back that night to the hotel, and I was hungry. What I had at the MomoCon, that was long gone. This was about 10:30, about 10 o'clock at night, and they said the only restaurant that was open was, their big restaurant. And I said, okay. So I go over there, and I said, can I place an order to go? Well, first I stood at the bar. And about 5 minutes, 6 minutes later, somebody noticed me. The bartender didn't even notice me, or the 2 people behind the bar. One was kind of drying off dishes and putting them away and had a towel on, so I thought he was bartender. Well, the other one was serving people on the other end and not paying attention to me. So I said, oh, well. Well, finally, a waitress noted me and says, can I help you? And I said, yes. Can I place an order to go? She said, yes, follow me. And so she said, have a seat at the table. I said, but I wanted to go. She said, well, sit here and I'll bring you a menu. She brought me the menu. I looked it over. But she took a while to come back. She took maybe 10 minutes before she came back to the table, and I'm just sitting there. I said, okay, they're busy. Are they busy or are they not busy? I don't know. So I finally decided what I wanted, and she finally came back over. And it was called a hot chicken sandwich. But I said, what is it consist of? What's the hot? She said, hot sauce. I said, no, ma'am. Can I get it? No hot sauce. She said, yeah, you can. It comes on a bun. And she was writing it up. She said, do you want the lettuce and tomato and pickle? I said, no, please. I can't have tomatoes. I'd be sick. She said, okay. And I said, I would just like to have mayonnaise with it. She said, all right. She said, you want french fries, tater tarts, or a house salad? I said, I really don't want any of it. She said, well, it comes with it. So I took the tater tarts, which I really didn't want, but I got them anyway. And so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting. It took about 20 minutes to cook a chicken sandwich. And she brought it to me, and, somebody else brought it to me, and I says, can I get some mayonnaise? He said, we put it in your thing. So I opened it up, not really paying any attention because it's late at night. By the time I get all this, it's after 11, way after 11. And so I said, well, this is not mayonnaise. He says, it's garlic mayonnaise with garlic pieces in it. I said, I can't have that. Could you bring me some regular mayonnaise? He said, yes. I didn't even pay any attention what else was in the box. She brought me the mayonnaise. I threw it in the bag, walked upstairs. Well, as I'm walking upstairs and putting down my stuff from MomoCon and putting down other stuff, I decided, to go to the bathroom, and I came back out and was going to sit down and eat, opened up my box of food, and there was no bread. It wasn't on a sandwich. It was not even fit to eat. It was burnt. The chicken was burnt to a crisp. I have a picture of it. I'll show you later. And also, I ate the tater tarts, but in the meantime, I said, well, I'm going to call and complain. So I go to the phone, I pick up the phone, and no dial tone. I said, what the heck? Well, on the phone it says push, you have to push to talk. And I'm going, push what to talk? So I finally found the little button, I pushed it, and I'm going, yeah, hello, this is Roxy from room so-and-so, and I just got through about 15 minutes ago being downstairs, and I ordered a chicken sandwich. And I didn't get my bread with it. And also, it's burnt and I can't eat it. She said, okay, we will call the restaurant and the manager will call you. So I said, okay, thank you. I hung up the phone and I sat there. And then while I'm waiting on that phone call, I said, well, I'll get on my computer and catch up with some of the stuff from the day. And I decided I'd call my friend and see if she was busy and wanted to talk. And she said, yeah, we can talk. Give me a couple minutes to get, my computer turned on. I said, okay. And we started talking. And after about 10-15 minutes, I said, boy, that manager's mighty busy. She hadn't called me back. So I went back over I told my friend, I said, I'm going to call him back while we're talking. She said, okay. I called him back. And this time the operator answered, and I told her what happened. She said, oh, they didn't call you? I'm so sorry. No, she didn't say sorry. She said, they didn't call you? I said, no. She said, well, hold on 1 minute. And she came back after about 30 seconds to a minute, and she said, the manager will be calling you in just a few minutes. So I said, okay, thank you. And I hung up the phone. And about a minute or less, the phone rang, and it was her. And I told her what happened. She said, I remember you, because we were discussing about the chicken, why they charged me so much for the chicken, but it was the extra bacon I got. Bacon was fine. Nothing wrong with the bacon. And I told her, I said, well, for one thing, I didn't get the bread. I didn't get the rolls, the hamburger rolls, or buns that went with it. She said, we can bring you up some more. I said, well, ma'am, I can't eat the chicken. It's burnt. She said, oh, really? I said, yes, ma'am. I didn't check it when I left, and I said I should have. She said, well, we can get you anything else you want on the menu. And I said, oh, would you like another one of these? Would you like another chicken sandwich that's not burnt? And I said, well, not really. She said, well, what else? I said, what can I have? She said, anything on the menu is free of charge. I said, well, I said, do you have plain chicken wings or plain chicken? She said, yeah, we got chicken wings. I said, I'll take an order of the plain chicken wings. She said, do you want the tater tarts and stuff to go with it again? I said, no, ma'am. I got plenty of that already. And so, about 15 minutes later, that was quick though, 15 minutes, or I wasn't really timing, but close 15-20 minutes later, it was midnight by then, by the time all said and done, my food showed up. And so I ate the tater tarts while I was waiting, but they weren't that good. So when she brought the chicken up, I set it, opened it up. I said, looks okay, but not really. Had a smell about it I didn't like. It had a lemony, like, batter. I don't know if they battered it, but it wasn't a plain chicken. But wasn't spicy. Just had some kind of spice on it that I don't know what it was. I ate 2 of them, threw the rest in the trash because they were not good. It was like they had been sitting there forever, and I don't know if they were battered. I really couldn't tell, but they were not good at all. So I threw them in the trash. So now I want to back up to the restaurant. When I first got to the restaurant, I'm sitting there at the table waiting, and I look down on the floor, and there is a straw wrapper, which I can understand. Somebody opened their straw and it fell on the floor, and they hadn't had time to sweep it up. But also there was about, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe, I don't remember, I got the picture of it, of these, the toothpicks that you put in things. These are not regular toothpicks. These are the ones that look like the sword. I guess they put them in their hamburgers and stuff. I don't know. But they were on the floor there. A little messy. I said, someone could trip on that. Slide on that. That looks like it might be slippery. But I didn't. But you would think, I go in restaurants, and yes, I sit down, and sometimes under the table you might see something where they haven't taken their little sweeper thing and got it up after the person left, the table. They don't always do that. I can understand a little bit of stuff on the floor if a kid was sitting there or a grown-up just dropped something. But they should have had that swept up already, those little toothpicks. Well, I went back upstairs, and I said I needed to get in the shower. By then, it's close to 12:30, 1 o'clock, by the time I get through talking to my friend and everything. I go to the bathroom and turn on the hot water to get it warm, hot. And it never really got hot. It was lukewarm. I didn't have any hot water at all. That was the pits. Good thing I took a quick shower. If I'd taken a longer shower, I would have had cold water instead of lukewarm water. So it wasn't good at all. Nope, wasn't happy there was no breakfast. Wasn't happy that there was no good food. So the next day I was talking to a lady, and they were trying to find a place to eat because the restaurants for some reason were not open. I don't know if it's because it was Sunday or it wasn't time for them to open. And I said, well, if y'all standing here and going over there to eat, if it opens while you're here, don't eat there. I said, my chicken was burnt. And this is an African-American lady, and I says, ma'am, no offense, I'm not trying to make fun of you or anything. I said, but that chicken was more darker than your skin. She said, no offense, ma'am, I can understand. She said, if you getting burnt food, you ain't gonna eat it. I said, no, ma'am, I didn't. They brought me some more chicken, and I said, it was yuck. It was worse than some of the worst chicken I've had. So they were looking for a place to eat because she kind of hinted at a couple of places they'd already eaten. The food wasn't good around there. I said, what has happened to Atlanta, Georgia, and the good Southern cooking and these hotel restaurants that, they charge you? My chicken sandwich was $18 plus $2 extra for the bacon. And it was burnt, so that wasn't worth it at all. Now the other restaurant that was closing, he said, the only thing I can get is a roll or something because they're closing. So I had to go to the other place. So it was not worth The 18. In the other place, their prices were for one of the items I looked at that I probably would have ate was something with chicken. I don't remember. $28. And I know economy's gone up and prices are high. But if you're going to serve prices that start at $18 and up, make sure your food is good. Make sure that it's not burnt or that it's fit to eat, you know. Oh, and by the way, the next morning, my diverticulitis kicked in. I ain't gonna say why and what it did to me, but I was in the bathroom for about 20 minutes. I wasn't throwing up. So, that was a disaster of a hotel. Hyatt Regency downtown Atlanta is off my list. Do not go there. Y'all have a blessed day now. Now, we'll see you on the next one.